What is up, everyone? Welcome back to the show. Obviously, this is the Juice Alert, and today I have a very special guest. His name is Chris, the Entertainer, aka the Entertainah Talkin Sports. He is a diehard New York Giants fan. He puts out really good content. You can find him on YouTube. You know, I'll put the links in the description of this episode. But Chris, how you doing today, man?
I appreciate you for having me on, man. I've watched your content before. I think you do a great job. Talk to you on Twitter sometimes. I see you, posting my comments. I appreciate you reaching out to me, having me on, and getting excited to talk a little Giants, maybe a little Aaron Rodgers. Should be a fun conversation.
Oh, yeah, no doubt about it. So, Chris, before we kind of get into the whole sports and things of that nature, the Giants, we'll maybe talk about some Knicks later on the show if you want, if we have time. But, kind of talk about, how you became a Giants fan. Where did that all start,
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in the New York area. My dad was a Giants fan. So I was always like a casual fan, probably up until the age of maybe 12, 13. I became a diehard. Tiki Barber was actually my first Giants player I fell in love with. Named my dog after him. And then, I fell in love with Eli. Eli's my favorite athlete of all time. But I started becoming a diehard fan right around maybe like 12, 13 years old. But I always grew up a New York Giants fan.
Gotcha. And what made you really start your YouTube channel,
Yeah, I was looking for a hobby. I had just broken up with my ex, and I was looking to get my mind off things. So I said, let me come on, try to make some people laugh, have fun, and then obviously I took it a lot more seriously as the channel started to grow. But never really, thought it would develop into anything of significance. You're just doing it for fun, which is what I always tell everybody. That's the first thing you should be doing something on YouTube that you're having fun with.
Yeah, you obviously have about 32,000 subscribers, so what was the video, or I should say, how long did it take for you to really sort of, blow up? You obviously you don't have like 100,000 subscribers or anything like that, but I say if you have 32,000 subscribers, that's a pretty successful channel, so when was the moment where you said, okay, I can maybe get to about 20K, something like that?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, I don't consider myself on the same level as like Tom Gracio. I know you've had on before, or maybe Strong Opinion Sports. They're pushing like 200K, and obviously there's people with 1 million. But I never thought I'd be close to this. Like I remember when I had 1,000, I was like blown away. I didn't go live until I had about 1,500 subs. I just made videos. And I remember I was live streaming a Giants game. I had about 1,500 subs. And I was just having fun with it, whatever, drinking, and I wasn't really taking it seriously. And then I see people in the chat. I was drinking. I was getting a little bit drunk, and people in the chat were like, stop drinking. We need your commentary. And I said to myself, wow, people actually come to me for this, and they actually take my opinion seriously. And, from that, it was kind of a wake-up call, and I just took it much more seriously. And I just people asking me in the comments, I always give my subscribers so much credit because they're the reason why I work as hard as I do. The encouraging comments, giving me good insight. A lot of the stuff that I say has to do with some things that they point out to me, whether it be on my YouTube channel, whether it be on Twitter. And I always say to my subscribers, I'm trying to build a community, not, this is your channel as much as it is mine. That's what I want people to feel like. So I credit them just as much as anything else, but still got a long ways to go to get to where I want to be. But I never thought I'd even be near where I am now. But yeah, I would say, that day is when I started to take it a lot more seriously.
What's your favorite New York Giants game that you watched and your favorite Giants game that you've been to live?
Ooh, watched, I got it. There's a couple classics, obviously, but they're all going to be from those playoff runs, 07 and 11, the 08 and 12 Super Bowl. The game against you in the freezing cold, I always say it, 2007 NFC title game was an instant classic. You're talking like -30 with the wind. That's up there for me. The 49er championship game where Eli Manning got beat like a rag doll. I always say that is my favorite Eli moment. He's my favorite player. But nothing's ever going to surpass, in terms of watching on TV, the first Super Bowl that Eli won in 08. I mean, the undefeated Patriots, Brady laughing at Plaxico Burress for saying that the Giants were going to win. Giants go out there after we narrowly lost to them the last game of the regular season where Copeland played all the starters. And I still say to this day, I think it's the biggest upset in the history of sports. For us to go out there and knock off the 18-0 Patriots. So I would say that whole playoff run, but that one game in particular. And ironically enough, when I go to Giants games, they always lose. Like, I went to 3 Giants games the year that they went to the Super Bowl in 07. They lost all 3 of them. The best game I've ever been to, and I've been to like a couple of wins, but it's actually a loss. But it was a big loss for the Giants. And it actually catapulted them, I think, to winning the Super Bowl in 11 was against your Packers. I went to the Giants versus Packers regular season game, 38-35. Packers won in the Meadowlands, or in MetLife, I should say. But
that was the year. Aaron Rodgers won his first MVP.
Yeah, Aaron Rodgers won his first MVP. But ironically enough, I think the Giants, after that game, they built up confidence, similar to the game against the Patriots in 7. And they said, if we could play with them, the Packers that year went 15-1. We could play with anybody. And even though we lost the game, I think it gave us confidence going forward. We ended up winning our last 2 games, making the playoffs, and then playing you guys in the second round before we knocked you off. But even though we lost that game, it was a big loss for the Giants. It was a momentum-building loss.
No doubt, no doubt. Before I kind of get into the current state of the Giants, I actually really didn't have it. I didn't have it planned in the show. Let's talk a bit about Eli Manning. What do you think is Eli Manning's legacy? For me personally, I think that Eli Manning's legacy is being a top 3 playoff quarterback of all time, not top 3 quarterback of all time, yeah. as far as his performances in the playoffs. I think that Brady, Montana, Eli, 3 best playoff quarterbacks of all time. What he did in those 2 playoff runs, beating Aaron Rodgers, beating Tony Romo, going on the road, beating a very good 49ers team, knocking off the Patriots twice. That's his legacy, and I think that really his legacy also is the longevity. He really wasn't ever a top 5 quarterback of all time, top 10 quarterback for the most part throughout his prime, but he was reliable, he was durable, he was a great leader, and I think that he's arguably one of the most underrated quarterbacks of all time just because he is top 10 in mostly every single statistical category out there. I understand that he played sort of in the era where, the numbers really started to compile and whatnot, but, you got to give him some credit. People say, oh, he played a long time. Well, how come your quarterback can't play for 15, 16 years and barely miss a game, So I think that Eli Manning is definitely a legend. Not quite a top 10 quarterback of all time, just because at his peak, he never was like Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
He never was Brady. But I think that he's definitely an underrated quarterback, definitely. What's his legacy to you?
I agree with you. I don't even think it should be a debate about, and obviously I'm biased. I'm a Giants fan. I'll be the first to say it, but that's my honest opinion. I think people look too much at the stats, even though, like you said, if you could go both ways. You could go playoffs, you could go Super Bowl accomplishments, you could go stats. And some people point to the fact that he didn't get hurt so he compiled stats, but that's one of his biggest strengths. The fact that he was able to stay on the football field. We've already seen it, 4 games Daniel Jones has missed since he's entered the league. Eli Manning never missed a start due to injury. Missed a start due to, starting Geno Smith, which we don't need to talk about. But Eli Manning was money when it mattered most. He was great in the 2-minute drill. He was great in the playoffs. He handled the New York media perfectly. That's something that needs to be said, too. There's a lot of quarterbacks that can't handle the New York spotlight, whether it's football, basketball, baseball. Not everybody could succeed in New York. Eli Manning handled it beautifully. I remember when he first came into the league, people used to pick on him for the all-shucks attitude. They said, oh, he can never make it here. He doesn't got that fire. Well, Eli was always himself, and he never folded to the media. He never folded to the fan base. He always believed in himself. You can't discount what he did in the big spot. And I agree with you for the most part in terms of regular season. He was always like a fringe top 10, 8 to 10 quarterback in the league, during the best times of his career for about an 8-9 year stretch. 2011, all year, was one of the top 2 or 3 quarterbacks in the sport that year. Obviously, Rodgers had, but Eli that year was phenomenal. I think he had the most fourth quarter comebacks ever, if I'm not mistaken, in a regular season.
And you guys needed it because you guys were like a 10-win or a 9-win team. Right?
9-win, and we were bad. That was a bad team. Go back, look at the numbers. We were 27th in total defense, 32nd in total rushing offense. He put the team on his back that year, him and Victor Cruz, and he had a number of big comebacks in the regular season. I think about the Patriots game, Jake Ballard catching the touchdown in New England at Gillette before we beat him in the Super Bowl. There was a number of others. He was money that year. He was great. But overall, yeah, I'd agree with that assessment. I'd say he was always consistently between like 8 and 12 at the quarterback position. But you knew what you were going to get from Eli. He was a guy that was going to be a leader. He was a guy that was going to show up every single Sunday. And when it mattered most, he was going to win. He was going to get the job done. And you look at the laundry list of quarterbacks, like you said, he knocked off. Aaron Rodgers, to me, is the most talented quarterback I've ever seen. Knocked him off in Lambeau Field on the road. He beat Brett Favre on the road, who never lost there in the playoffs. I think his career record's 8-3 at Lambeau Field, one of them coming to Eli Manning. Rodgers 4-2 at Lambeau Field, one of them coming to Eli Manning. He obviously knocked off Tony Romo in a game that nobody thought we would win against the 13-3 Cowboys. Knocked off the undefeated Patriots. Beat Brady twice. who's known as the greatest playoff quarterback of all time. So I mean, and Matt Ryan, Jeff Garcia, you could go down all the quarterbacks that he knocked off in the playoffs, and he's got 5 road playoff wins. I think the second most ever. He's got the third most fourth quarter comebacks, I think, in the history of the playoffs, even though he's only played in 12 playoff games. So I mean, Eli Manning was money. He was clutch, and in the end, the reason he's going to the Hall of Fame is because you can't tell the story of the NFL without him.
Yeah, and Eli Manning wasn't one of those quarterbacks that always made the playoffs, but when he got in, he got it done, you know what I'm saying? And you look at that draft class, Roethlisberger, Rivers, 3 quarterbacks that, and Eli Manning, obviously, too, 3 quarterbacks that will get Hall of Fame votes. I think Roethlisberger's in. I think Eli's in. Rivers, fringe, but I'm not, upset if he makes it in, but I think that if I could pick one quarterback for one game, I'll go with Eli. I'll go with Eli over Big Ben.
Oh, I agree with you. In a big game, I'm taking Eli, and I think you got to look at circumstances, too. I think Rivers is a compiler. He's a guy that was always in that 7 to 10 range throughout his entire career. He was always a very good.
He couldn't win. He can't win big games, though.
Can't win big games. He also played in sunny California. I always say that. Put Eli in sunny California. Stats probably a little bit better. Ben, I don't know how Ben would have handled the New York spotlight. Plus, you look at his playoff numbers. They're not that good. They're just not. People forget he got carried to the Super Bowl his second year in the league. He had a great team. You look at the team Pittsburgh always had around him. You're talking about a top 5 offensive line, top 5 defense his entire career. So yes, most people are going to say Ben's the best, and I understand it. He played. He was a better quarterback later into his career. Eli, up until about 2012, in my opinion, maybe 2013, was probably the best quarterback in the class, and then the Giants failed him over the second half of his career. So Ben will probably be remembered as the better quarterback, but I think Eli, at his best, might have been the best in the class, and Eli, obviously, in the big moment, was the best in the class. But all 3 probably headed to the Hall of Fame. I'd agree with you. Ben and Eli are probably shoo-ins. Rivers is kind of iffy, but he'll probably get in when all is said and done.
Yeah, last point before I transition to Daniel Jones. But yeah, last point, I will say, Ben Roethlisberger was one of those quarterbacks that was a little bit raw coming out of college. That's one of the reasons why he actually dropped in the draft. I think that he really benefited from having a really good organization. I'm not saying the Giants are a terrible organization, but I think between Baltimore right now and Pittsburgh, you can say those are the 2 most stable organizations right now in football. The Giants, they've had a little dysfunction over the past couple of years, So I think that Roethlisberger definitely landed in a great situation. Ultimately, I think it turned out best for all 3. Unfortunately, Rivers probably is not going to get a Super Bowl ring, but he's got all the stats. He's going to go to the Hall of Fame more than likely, and hey, I'll take Philip Rivers' career if I could have it, But that's pretty much all I have about Eli. Let's transition to Daniel Jones now. Obviously, I'm joined by Chris the Entertainer. You can catch him on YouTube. I'll put the links in the description as well. But Chris, let's talk about Daniel Jones. A lot of Giants fans are split on the guy. Personally, I wasn't a fan of the pick at number 6. Now, when you look back at the quarterbacks that were drafted, Haskins, not in the league currently. We'll see if he can reboot his career eventually. Drew Lock, he's iffy, not great. We'll see if he can reboot. I think he has talent, but we'll see. So far, outside of Kyler Murray, it's been a lot of meh. And Daniel Jones, he's still a starting quarterback today. And I think that he's going to get another year to prove himself. And I think that he actually, to a certain degree, deserves that 3rd year because I've always said, give quarterbacks, 3 to 4 years to prove themselves if they have some talent. I'm not the biggest Daniel Jones fan, but a big reason why the Giants are not in position to draft Justin Fields, not in position to draft Trevor Lawrence is because Daniel Jones improved in the second half of the season, and the team won some games. He wasn't great. He did play very well versus the Cowboys, but, he improved. He's buying some more time. But I recently made a video saying Daniel Jones is a below-average quarterback. I've compared him to Jameis Winston. I think that he's basically Jameis Winston with a worse arm. I mean, I think Jameis was really up and down, but the one thing you could say about Jameis was, man, he's got a cannon for an arm. Jones, his arm's okay, but I want to get your thoughts on Daniel Jones. What were your expectations of Jones heading into, his career as a Giant, and what have you seen so far? Are you sold on him?
Okay, yeah, a lot of Giants fans get on me for my opinion on Daniel Jones because I am not conclusive one way or the other. A lot of Giants fans are completely done with him, which I am not, and a lot of Giants fans are completely sold on him, which I am not. I was not in love with the pick when they made everybody knows that my draft reaction.
What is it? Oh, no! Oh, my! Oh, my! You gotta be... No! You gotta be... How did they take Daniel Jones? How did they... Jones? The New York Giants set up Daniel Jones over Josh Allen! No way!
I was not happy. I wanted Josh Allen, the edge rusher who ended up with Jacksonville. He actually got hurt this year. I think he only had 2 sacks, but I was a big fan of his coming out of Kentucky. He was actually, I remember I did my first draft profile video on him. I was in love with him. So my reaction had as much to do with that as taking Daniel Jones. I actually didn't hate Daniel Jones. I thought I had him ranked 3rd at the quarterback position in that draft. I had Haskins above him. I'll be the first to say it coming out. I thought Jones was probably more ready for the pro game, being that he played at Duke, undercut Cliff, had the pro pedigree. I thought Haskins had a little bit more upside. He had a really good arm at Ohio State. Didn't work out for Haskins. A lot of people point to his work ethic. And obviously he wasn't given the best of situations there in Washington. Jones, to me, improved this year, like you said. I knew he was going to struggle this year to start the season. And anybody that was reasonable had to think that. You were changing offensive coordinators. And I don't think he fits Garrett's scheme as well as he fits Shermer's. He was drafted for Shermer's scheme. You were changing offensive coordinators. You had a challenging schedule to start the year. I mean, you look at the teams we played to start the year in a new scheme. You got Pittsburgh, great defense. You had the Bears, good defense. You had the Rams, good defense. You had the 49ers, pretty good defense. It was a laundry list of good defenses. So I knew he was going to struggle to start the year. I'm not making excuses. His final statistics aren't where I was hoping they would be. Make no mistake about it. But when you look at the lack of weaponry, you factor in that Saquon Barkley went down after the first game. I think that has a lot to do with it. You look at Jones' stats with Barkley, without him. 23 touchdowns, 8 picks with Saquon Barkley in the lineup over 10 games. 9 touchdowns, 13 picks over 14 games without him. He's a different quarterback. And some of that may have to do with the scheme. But regardless, I think we all agree Barkley in the lineup is going to generate more attention towards him helping out the passing game. So I think getting Barkley back, trying to bring in a weapon this offseason, that's what this offseason for me is about as a Giants fan. Finding out whether or not Daniel Jones is the guy. And in order to do that, the Giants have to get him some weapons. You need to get Barkley back. You need to go out there. You need to draft yourself a wide receiver. Maybe you sign one as well. You've got to revamp this offense and give him all the pieces that he needs. And if he doesn't get it done, if he's not a borderline top 10 quarterback at the end of the year, that's when you start thinking outside the box. But going into next season, I want to give him a fair opportunity. I want to give him a fair shake. And to do that, I think the Giants got to get him some weapons. And if he doesn't work out, the next guy that comes in is set up better than he was.
Yeah, my biggest knock on Jones really is the turnovers, because you look at his career, so far I actually did some research. He started 26 games, and Chris, he's got 39 turnovers, man. And listen, the big...
No. I agree with you. But over his last 5 games, only 1 turnover. Fumbles and interceptions combined.
Again, like I said, he improved. But the thing about it is, look, you can't win games in the NFL if your quarterback consistently turns the ball over. Look at Tampa Bay last year. They had a really good offense. And a lot of the same pieces are still there. You have Mike Evans, you had Godwin, you had the good tight ends, They had a really good offense, but they only won 7 games because they were turning the ball over so much, And I think that's really the big focus with Jones. Can he cut down the turnovers? But another knock that I kind of have on Jones is I think his upside is good, but not great. When I look at a guy like Josh Allen, man, his upside is off the charts. And I just think that Jones on his best day, if you were to line up 20 quarterbacks and Jones was in that category, I think on his best day, I still think 15 to 20 quarterbacks can beat him. I really think that their best day might be better than his. You know what I'm saying?
I don't know if I'd go that far. It's hard for me to judge what his best day is because the Giants set him up so poorly. It really is. That's my honest assessment. It is hard for me to judge that. He's had a bad offensive line, which is we're hoping is getting better. He hasn't had the weaponry. I understand where you're getting. He's never going to be Josh Allen. Never going to be Josh Allen. I watch Josh Allen and I say to myself, there's 3 quarterbacks that I've seen in the NFL over the last 15 to 20 years that I look at and my eyes pop out of my head when I just see their raw talent and ability. Josh Allen is one of them. Josh Allen, Aaron Rodgers, Pat Mahomes. When I see those guys play, my eyes pop out of my head. I'm not saying that Brady's not the greatest. I get it, but he doesn't have the raw, physical, natural talent that a guy like Josh Allen does. I mean, I watched that throw he made last week in the playoffs. This guy, he's facing the throw. He's not even stepping into it. His body's like this rather than like this. His body's like this, facing the defender. Doesn't step into the throw. Snaps his wrist like this. The ball's like 100-mile-an-hour fastball, 40 yards down the seam, and he hits Diggs. Quarterbacks shouldn't be able to make that throw. So Daniel Jones will never have the upside of Josh Allen. Make no mistake about it. Do I think he can develop into a good quarterback? Yeah, because I do. And not that I'm ever going to compare him to Tom Brady. But I look at Tom Brady. Tom Brady's not the most gifted quarterback. He's a guy that got good coaching. He got good players around him.
Not to cut you off, but the one thing Jones does have is his mobility. I think that he needs to use his legs a little bit more. He needs to use those legs a little bit more.
You got to worry about injuries, though, too. But I agree with you. He needs to use his legs a little bit more. He did get better, in my opinion, in the pocket in terms of reading pressure and things like that. He's still not where I want him to be, but he improved in that aspect. The thing with Jones is I feel like he improved at everything I wanted him to going into the year in terms of the nuances of the game, the pre-snap reads.
But he didn't make a whole lot of big plays like he did last year.
He didn't make a whole lot of big plays. Yeah. It was kind of the reverse. The year before, he made some big plays, but he had the fumbling issues. He was bad at pre-snap reads. He got better in those aspects. Still not where I need him to be, but he got better there. But he didn't have the big plays, and he didn't win games. So next year, I think it needs to all come together. And if it doesn't, well, then maybe we're looking for a quarterback.
Yeah, and I think that one of the things that I'm pretty much saying about Jones is you got the turnovers. That's an issue. That needs to cut down. But even if you take away the turnovers, I think that you could find a quarterback to make some of the throws that he can make. You know, if I'm evaluating quarterbacks, I kind of want a quarterback that's anywhere from the 16 to 18 range. I think that if they're not one of those quarterbacks, I'm done with them. I want to upgrade. I want something else, you know, because I'm
gonna take it further. I'm gonna take it further. I want top 10 because I don't know. Maybe Jones will be that, but in today's NFL, if I'm gonna give a quarterback a second contract with the amount of money that they make, they got to be top 10. I look at quarterbacks that are even top 10 that got those second contracts. They did nothing. Matt Stafford didn't win anything after he got that second deal. Matt Ryan, after he got the deal when they went to the Super Bowl, hasn't done anything. You've got to be an elite or borderline elite talent, in my opinion, to warrant that contract. So I agree with you on that.
Yeah, well, that's pretty much all about Jones. We'll see if he can improve in his third season because it's a make or break year, Chris. It really is. So I want to transition to Joe Judge now. I was actually not a huge fan of the Joe Judge hire, but hey, guess what? I'm on board now, Chris, you know, because here was my knock on Joe Judge, you know. I felt that he had very little coaching experience, and we've seen Bill Belichick disciples be good and be bad. We've seen guys like Brian Flores, Mike Vrabel be really good. We've seen some other guys just be complete flops. And I also looked at Joe Judge and I said, okay, he's going into a division with 3 head coaches that have been to or have won Super Bowls. Now, obviously, people are down on Doug Peterson. We'll get to him later in the show. People are down on McCarthy, but at least they've been to Super Bowls. You know, I felt that he was at a very big disadvantage. I felt that he would be seeing those guys 6 times a year. He wouldn't be able to live up to the hype. And I felt the roster was not that good. And I was wrong. I'm on the Joe Judge train. I think that he got his team well prepared each week. I think that the team seems very competitive under him. I think that the locker room seems to really buy into Joe Judge. You know, he seems to make adjustments. And last year, well, really this year, but last year, you guys were 1 game away from the division title. So I'm on the Joe Judge bandwagon. I definitely think that he can become really, really good to great potentially. So what were your thoughts on Joe Judge when he was brought in, and what have you seen so far?
Yeah, I remember when the Giants were doing the coaching search, we brought in, I think it was like 5 or 6 prospects. Don Wink Martindale from the Ravens. We brought in Eric Bieniemy from the Chiefs. We brought in the DB's coach, Chris Richard from the Cowboys. We brought in Mike McCarthy. And we brought in Joe Judge, and I'm probably forgetting somebody else. But Matt Rule, we were going to bring in Matt Rule, and he took the job before he got here. And I wanted Matt Rule. I also wanted Rivera, who we didn't even get an opportunity to. We signed with Washington way ahead of time. And I didn't know much about Joe Judge, but I remember I did preview videos on every one of them. And every one of my other preview videos got like 6,000, 7,000 views. Judge got like 1,000. Because everybody just said, there's no way they're going to hire Joe Judge. Who the hell is Joe Judge? And I get it. It wasn't the Giants' way. And I had the same mindset. I was like, I'm going to do the video because they're interviewing. I want to know about him. I want to, I want to learn about him just in case. And I remember, you go back, watch the video. When I made the video, I said in the video, I don't think they're going to hire him because of his lack of experience, but I was very impressed with him when I did my research. He was going to get a doctorate degree. He was 37, 38 years old, was doing that well being a coach in the NFL, learned under the 2 best minds in football, Saban and Belichick. And even in the video, I said, I completely understand why they're bringing this guy in. I think he's going to be a head coach in the NFL soon, but I don't think it'll be yet with the New York Giants. So I understood it. I think they took the word of Belichick. And when he got the job, I was behind it. I liked that the Giants thought outside the box. It wasn't a typical Giants hire. I liked that they brought in a young guy. I thought that it fit the mold of this team. You had a lot of young players, and you were building it from the ground up rather than bringing in a refurb like a Mike McCarthy. I thought it was a better match for the team that we had. So I'm not going to lie to you and tell me he was my first choice. I wanted Rule, like most Giant fans. I wanted Rivera. But once I started to learn Judge, and then he had the opening press conference, I was all in. And I'm going to support him until such time, I feel like I shouldn't. But so far in his first year, I thought he organized a great staff. I thought Patrick Graham was phenomenal. Garrett, Giants fans have their doubts about. But overall, I thought it was a really good coaching staff. I thought Gettleman had a good offseason. And I thought that he got the most out of his players, which is what you ask in a head coach. I think the players love playing for him. And I do think for the first time in a long time that the New York Giants are building something. That I do think we're setting ourselves up to be a consistent, good team, which is all you can ask for as an NFL fan.
Dive into Patrick Graham and Jason Garrett a little bit more. How would you grade them so far in year one with the Giants? Great Patrick Graham and great Jason Garrett for me. You can go a little bit in-depth if you want.
Yeah, we'll start with Graham. I mean, going into the year, I think most Giant fans thought the offense would be more advanced than the defense, just because of how bad the defense was the year before. And the offense was actually decent, maybe 20th in the league. And the defense far exceeded expectations. I think they finished 9th in yards, 11th in points, maybe reverse, regardless, top 11 in both. They were like first for a while, up until maybe the last 2 or 3 weeks in knockdown percentage. And what I was really impressed with Patrick Graham about, you look at the players on this team: Leonard Williams, career year; James Bradbury, career year; Logan Ryan, very good year. Peppers had a really good year. The whole defense outperformed what most people thought they were going to do. And he got the most out of the talent that he had on the roster. Not to mention, you look at the edge rushers, they go down. Lorenzo Carter out for the year after week 2. O'Shane Zimenez barely played all year. Xavier McKinney didn't play until the last 2 weeks, really. He got the most out of the talent on this roster, and it really excites me as a Giant fan when we actually get more talent here, which I think we will this offseason, and these guys will grow and become better players. I think he could be a dynamic defensive coordinator in the NFL. I think he's a really smart guy. And the way he was able to generate pressure. I mean, the Giants, I think, were top 10 in sacks, or at least they were up there for a while with nobody in terms of the edge rusher position. He generated pressure through scheme and coverage. And I think the Giants, a lot of people point to that they think the Giants' biggest need on defense is the edge rusher. I actually disagree. I think we need a stronger second cornerback because I think Graham wants to be more aggressive. And to do that, I think you need to be strong at the corner position. I think they're going to be like the Patriots, where the Patriots always got pressure through their secondary. The Ravens as well. They have a very strong secondary. So I think that's the approach the Giants are going to take. But year one, I thought Patrick Graham had a really, really good year. I'd say an A. Like, it was that good in terms of my initial expectations. On the other side of the ball, I try to be as fair as I can. Like, most Giant fans think Jason Garrett is the Antichrist. They think he's complete garbage. I can't say that conclusively because, I talked about Daniel Jones earlier, that he had limitations to the offense because he didn't have weapons on the team. Well, it's the same thing for Garrett. Like, Garrett probably going into the year thought that Barkley was going to be a big part of that offense. He goes down after week 1. I mean, I think the offense was probably going to revolve around him. It completely changed everything. Ingram dropped 11 balls, the most in all of football. Darius Slayton, I think, was top 10 or 11. Now, I'm not saying he's great. His scheme, I get it. People say he doesn't scheme guys open. But he had limitations to this offense. So I'm going to be fair. You had 3 new guys to that offensive line. That 60% of the offensive line had never played together before. That took some time. You had the pandemic. You had no preseason. These guys couldn't get acclimated to the new offense. I'm not saying he was good because he wasn't.
You can work with it for another year.
Yeah, I could work with him for another year. I think Jones and the players being in the scheme for another year might be the better approach than bringing in a complete outsider and them having to learn a completely new scheme. I think the thing that's evident to me on this offense is we need more talent. You need Barkley back, and you need to get better weaponry on the outside.
Yeah, I agree. And we talked about Jones a little bit earlier. I think that at times his turnovers kind of held Jason Garrett back a little bit, But we'll see, man. I think Garrett's offense fits kind of Jones' strengths to a certain degree. I think that, once you get more talent, once you get another wide receiver, hopefully, once Evan Ingram stops dropping passes, you guys will be pretty good, And I was really surprised by, Patrick Graham and his performance. I thought the defense would be improved, and I like the front 7, but you guys are arguably a top 15 to 10 defense this year, no doubt about it. So definitely like the Patrick Graham hire. Let's move on to Dave Gettleman. Chris, it's pretty much the same thing with Daniel Jones, same thing with the coordinators. People are split on Dave Gettleman. So, Chris, I need your thoughts on how Dave Gettleman has done so far as the New York Giants GM. He's obviously drafted Saquon Barkley, drafted Will Hernandez, drafted Dexter Lawrence, Daniel Jones, Darius Slayton, Andrew Thomas, Xavier McKinney. And really what it comes down to for me is, can Daniel Jones be the guy, and will Saquon Barkley continue to stay healthy? Because those are two players that Gettleman specifically really put his name to, and they were really high draft picks. Both picks were in the top 7. Jones was pick number 6, Barkley number 2, and Barkley's had injuries. Jones is okay. So, I mean, they got to start performing. But what do you think about Gettleman so far?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think in the end, Gettleman's legacy is going to be tied to Jones. And I think Gettleman knows that. And it's why I think Gettleman's going to go out there and get him every piece he can in terms of weaponry on the offensive side of the ball. This year, he tried to shore up the offensive line. They drafted 3 offensive linemen. He's trying to protect his investment in Jones, but I think he knows he's going to be critiqued based off of Barkley and Jones. Listen, I always try to defend Gettleman when I think it's appropriate. I think he inherited a horrible situation, a horrible locker room in 2017. They quit on Ben McAdoo. They tried to get rid of the veterans. They had no cap space. They had an aged quarterback that I think was forced on Gettleman by ownership. Ownership will never admit that. And I think he tried to improve. The Giants made a vital mistake in 18. They tried to rebuild and win at the same time. Can't happen. Can't do it. And I think some of that's ownership's responsibility. Some of it's Gettleman's responsibility. Regardless, you scratch it, you rip it up. 2019, you start the rebuild. You draft a quarterback. You get rid of Beckham. You get rid of Snacks Harrison. You get rid of Olivier Vernon. You get rid of the older players. You get rid of Janoris Jenkins in the offseason. And you start your rebuild. You start bringing in younger players via the draft. You clear up some cap space. 2019 was still a meh year for me for Gettleman. This year, I thought he hit it out of the park.
Been some money in free agency, and those free agents hit, man. They really did.
Yeah, the question is, can they build up that going into 2021? And some people credit Judge more than Gettleman. I don't care. The Giants as a team, the acquisitions they brought in, they hit it out of the park. Logan Ryan, great signing. Signing Marcus Golden, then trading him for a 6th-round pick when nobody wanted him. You got a free 6th-round pick out of it. Extending Nick Gates before the year started. Guy didn't surrender a sack all year. Now you got him for $3 million the next 2 years of 2022, 2023. Obviously, James Bradbury, Blake Martinez, Kyler Fackrell was good for us, former Packer. They did a lot of good things this offseason in terms of free agency. I love the Andrew Thomas pick, and Andrew Thomas started off bad. Don't get me wrong. First 7-8 games, he struggled. They made their adjustments. The last 8 games, he was as good as any rookie left tackle in the class. So I like where we're going with Andrew Thomas. I like the direction of his football team. McKinney looked really good in the last game. So this offseason, I was all aboard the Dave Gettleman train. It's why I supported bringing him back in 2021. I wanted continuity. But like Jones, it's a put up or shut up year for Gettleman as well. If Jones struggles this year, we win 6 games, we're ripping it up. New GM, new quarterback. You start from scratch. You start the rebuild all over again. It is a huge year, not just for Gettleman, for Jones as well. They got to win at least 8 or 9 games. They have to have a respectable record. They have to prove that they're growing. This year, they proved that they were growing. They won 6 games over a 4-win season. They had a much more challenging schedule. You look at the schedule we had this year compared to the year before. I don't even think we were worthy of being a 4-win team the year before. That's how bad that team was when we got rid of everybody.
You beat the terrible Washington football team 2 times. Those are 2 giving wins, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and we lost to the Jets. I mean, this year, we were a legitimate, I think, 6-win team. And it's what I thought we'd be going into the year. Could have been 9 wins. I mean, we should have beat the Cowboys the first time. They called back 2 touchdowns.
Beat the Rams. The Rams were really good.
Could have beat the Rams. Could have beat the Bucks. We lost 25-23. Lost to the Eagles on an Evan Ingram drop ball when we had an 11-point lead with 4 minutes to go. Giants could have easily won 8 or 9 games this year. They were a much improved team. So I thought it warranted bringing Gettleman back. I don't know if I would have brought him back going into the year. I might have started from scratch when you fired Sherman, but they brought him back. So I'm all for sticking with Gettleman for another year. He's on the hot seat, just like Jones is going into the year. Got to see progression from the team. Got to see progression from Jones.
I was a big critic of Dave Gettleman for trading away OBJ, but hey, so far the OBJ trade is not looking too bad, Gettleman spent some money. He's tried to fix the offensive line. It's not all the way there yet, but I like that he's, really investing in the line of scrimmage. The Leonard Williams trade, obviously he's paid off, getting Dexter Lawrence. A lot of people thought that you shouldn't take a defensive tackle. Well, Dexter Lawrence looks pretty good to me, and unfortunately the DeAndre Baker pick didn't work out, but so far—
That's bad luck.
Yeah, it's bad luck, But so far, Dave Gettleman, he's done some good things. Not saying Dave Gettleman's this great general manager or whatnot, but he's a competent GM. What he's done, there seems to be a vision with Gettleman. And as long as the team continues to improve, I'm okay with letting Dave Gettleman slide. You know what I'm saying? So that's kind of how I feel about Gettleman. Let's transition to Saquon Barkley. Arguably, to me at least, the most talented running back in all football. I put him in the category with Derrick Henry, Dalvin Cook, Christian McCaffrey. He's in that same tier. He's excellent. But the problem is there's been some injuries, Chris. 2019, he missed 3 games due to injury. Wasn't 100% when he played in some of those games. Probably rushed back a little bit too fast, in my opinion. And last year, he missed 14 games due to injury. And My worry about Saquon is this, can he stay healthy for one? And also, if he performs very well, you're going to pay that guy a crap ton of money because when he's on the field, I think he's worth that money. But we've seen running backs in the past not be the solo key to winning Super Bowls. I think that quarterback's more important. I think offensive line is more important. Your wide receiver core today is more important. Your defensive line, your secondary. Heck, I even paid for a stud middle linebacker over a really good, running back because you can move them around, a lot of good quarterbacks, a lot of speed, guys moving around, so I think that running back is very low on the totem pole of what you need to win a Super Bowl. Obviously, you need to be a balanced team, but you look at the Patriots. I mean, they just plug in a running back after a running back, They don't have an Adrian Peterson. They don't have a Derrick Henry. They won multiple Super Bowls, and in the last 10 years, the only elite running back that has won a Super Bowl is Marshawn Lynch. So I actually threw out the idea that the Giants should at least consider trading Saquon Barkley because I understand he's great, he's excellent, but if the injuries are there and you're not willing to pay him all that money and you can get running back by committee, I think it's not a bad idea, But I will say, I think there is some value to having a Derrick Henry, having a Christian McCaffrey, if you feel they're going to be the focal point to your offense. And we know Saquon Barkley, for the most part, hopefully next year is going to be the focal point of the offense. I think that Daniel Jones, we recognize, okay, he's got some talent, but he needs a good roster around him. He's not one of those guys that's going to be able to make up for average running backs, average offensive lines. He needs a good team around him. And I think that he could really benefit from handing the ball off to Saquon 20 times, throwing screen passes to him. He'll be a safety net. I think the offense would be better to be run through Saquon Barkley first and foremost. So it's a very tough evaluation for me. I'd at least be on the phones trying to say, hey, do you want Saquon? Because there's a sucker born every day, Chris. Someone is going to want to get Saquon Barkley with his talent. So am I crazy to think the Giants should at least consider maybe getting on the phone and trading Barkley if the injuries continue to pile up and whatnot?
Well, a lot of Giants fans agree with you on that. I go live all the time. A lot of them think they should. Here's my take on Saquon Barkley. And maybe, you know what, if you get blown away by an offer, you always listen. And I agree with a lot of what you had to say. I don't think he's a typical running back, which I think you were kind of getting to. Obviously putting him in the top tier class with guys like McCaffrey.
I think he's an interchangeable running back. I think there's about 6 guys in the NFL that they're just different. He's one of those guys.
They're different. He's not one of those. Yeah, he's one of those guys. And so I do think you could run the offense through him. Similar to what Gurley was for the Rams before he went down. Running backs like that. So I do think he's more valuable than a typical running back and maybe as valuable as most receivers when he's 100%. And the thing that really upsets me about Barkley is he's never really been given that opportunity. We have not been able to get him an offensive line, which was a mistake to draft him in the first place because we didn't have an offensive line to support him from the start. But he's here. And next year, like Jones, I want to get to actually see him with what I think will be an improved offensive line, what I think will be an improved quarterback in the second year of a scheme, if we could go out there and get him some wide receivers. Because I do think Saquon Barkley could be dynamite with the right pieces around him, if you support him with a real roster. And in terms of trading him, I would not trade him this year because I look at it like the stock market. You're trading him when he's worth 30% of what you bought him for. If he stays healthy and has a great year, that's when I come to a crossroads and I have to decide, am I going to extend the running back and give him a 4-year extension, or am I then going to trade him? And I think that is where the Giants will come to a crossroads. If I was going to trade him, I would wait until the conclusion of the 2021 season, and then I would do it if I was going to trade him, because I think I'd get more than if he stayed healthy than if I trade him before the season this year. Coming off an ACL tear, nobody knows what they're getting. So I still want to see a year out of Barkley, and then I would be able to tell you what I would do. I'm hoping he's in the long-term plans. I love Saquon Barkley. He's my favorite player on the team. Great leader, great guy. And I think a lot of Giants fans love him. And they want him to be the guy. But you need results. And health is important when it comes to the NFL. And so far, the high ankle sprain I thought was a bit of a fluke. He did come back, like you said, after 3 weeks, but he probably should have sat another week or two. Definitely rushed it back. Last year, obviously, an ACL injury. I look at other guys. They've come back. Peterson's one of them. And hopefully Barkley's one of those guys. He's a physical freak. Put up or shut up year for him as well. I mean, to me, it's Jones, Barkley, Gettleman. And if Gettleman goes, they both go. Those are his babies, like you said. And if they bring in a new GM, we're starting all over again. So a lot of pressure on all 3 of those guys.
How many running backs are better than Saquon Barkley today? What running backs would you take over him?
If Barkley's 100%?
Yeah, I think that Derrick Henry is the best right now because of what he's done in the postseason, because you can give him the ball 30 times a game. He's not going to get tired, not going to really wear out. He's not the best receiving threat, but I think just based on what you've done for me lately, based on production, and based on a running back that can run between the tackles, that can give me those extra yards if needed, and on the goal line, 1 yard to go, I'm giving the ball to Derrick Henry all day, every day. So I don't really care about his limitations. He's a 10 as far as running between the tackles. I'm okay if he's a 5 or a 6 as far as receiving goes. I think that Barkley and some of the other running backs are more well-rounded than a guy like Derrick Henry, but I think he's the guy. You know, he just rushed for 2,000 yards. I think that he's definitely the #1 guy right now. Barkley's a little more talented as far as sheer ability, but yeah, I think that's Derrick Henry, really everyone else right now. What do you think?
It's hard for me to say you're wrong. I mean, I want to say Barkley's the most talented. And I think it's probably between him and McCaffrey in terms of being the most talented, but it's hard for me to say you're wrong. I mean, the guy's coming up with 2,000 a year. He's proven he could take the bulk of a big workload. 2 years in a row now. He's great between the tackles. A lot of people express that they want to see more of that from Barkley, or we need to bring in a running back that is similar to a guy like Derrick Henry to complement Saquon Barkley.
It's really not Barkley's game. You know, he's more of your East and West guy, not necessarily North and South. But how many running backs would you take over Barkley?
I'd have to take Henry. McCaffrey's close because McCaffrey's coming off the injury as well, but I'd probably take McCaffrey. He's had more success in the NFL up to this point. After that, if Barkley's 100%, I think I got Barkley next.
Okay. Dalvin Cook's obviously up there too, you know. But
he's up there. Yeah, that's I wouldn't debate you if you said he was better. That's fair. Yeah. But Barkley to me is definitely still in the top 5.
Oh yeah, no doubt about it. Definitely. And he's better than Zeke. Cowboys fans, you know, kind of get triggered about that.
Zeke's falling off. Zeke's a great running back. Don't get me wrong. Zeke, I respect Zeke. Great blocker. Great short yardage running back. Puts his head down, gets those tough yards. He always falls forward. Never loses yards. But at this point in Zeke's career, if Barkley's 100%, he's better than Zeke.
Yeah. And looking back on that draft where Saquon was drafted, you know, do you regret that pick? Because honestly, if I was a Giants fan, obviously I'm not, but I would say I love Saquon. He's a team guy. He's great when he's on the field, but you passed on guys like Quentin Nelson. You passed on Bradley Chubb. And we mentioned earlier, you know, you can get a guy like Nick Chubb in the second round. Heck, we talked about Derrick Henry. He was a second-round pick, Chris. I think Gettleman just overreached for Barkley. I don't know why.
Yeah. Listen, he's a Giant. I'm happy he's here. I support him. I love Saquon Barkley. If I'm being completely honest, on draft night, I wasn't on YouTube yet. I wanted the Giants to trade down. I wasn't in love with any of the quarterback prospects there. I think the Giants were in a lose situation. If they would have stood at 2, they were going to lose no matter what. Like, if you took Nelson, fans would have complained because the team wouldn't have been good yet. And fans would have said you took a guard at 2. When do guards go second overall? If they took Chubb, it's not like Chubb would have been this franchise-transcending player at number 2 that would have made the Giants this 10-11 win team at this point in time. So I think no matter what they did at 2, unless they took Josh Allen, but even Josh Allen, he would have needed time to develop. Darnold wouldn't have worked, obviously. We saw what happened with the Jets. Rosen wouldn't have worked. Lamar Jackson was never going to come here. We were never drafting him. So I think if we stayed at 2, we were in a lose situation no matter what. If I'm being completely honest with you, I think that the move there was to trade down. I don't blame them for taking Barkley at 2. Most people had him as the best player in that draft, even though he was a running back, but they should have traded down. If there was an ability to trade down to 5, and then you take a guy like Nelson there, because Barkley probably would have went to the Browns at 4 if I had to guess, that would have been the move. They should have traded down.
Yeah, and obviously I'm a big Saquon Barkley fan. I'm just kind of, you know, being the critic I have to be, you know, but yeah. I definitely hope that Barkley, you know, bounces back this year. I hope that he has a very good, healthy season. And if he's healthy, man, your Giants can do some great things, man. Speaking of what the Giants could do this upcoming season, you know, I personally think the New York Giants are a borderline fringe playoff team. I think that they honestly could win the NFC East next year. I really do. In the 2021 season, I'm not bugging. Okay, you Giants fans get on me, say, you're a hater of our team. No, I'm not. I'm just a critic, you know. But I think the Giants could realistically make the playoffs, you know, because look at what they have, you know. It seems like you guys have found a good head coach. And Joe Judge, I think that he's already, you know, not just an average coach. He's an above-average coach. So, above-average coach. Saquon Barkley comes back. He's one of the best running backs in all of football. You got a solid defense, good secondary, could add a pass rush, maybe, could use another corner, but I think the defense is going to be a top 10 to 15 unit next year. You got a young, improving offensive line, and I'm not the biggest Daniel Jones fan, but as long as Daniel Jones doesn't turn the football over, as long as he uses his legs, and if he improves and shows some of the big plays we saw his rookie year, I think the Giants can make some noise. I really do. Like I said, the team could use a pass rush. You know, they could use a couple of extra wide receivers. I do want to see them maybe make a trade for a big-time wide receiver or draft one in the first round, you know, or just acquire one second, third round. But I think this division is very winnable next year. I think that Washington's going to be pretty good. I think that Dallas is going to be pretty good. Not really worried about Philadelphia, but the Giants, they're going to be right in that mix. They almost won the division this year, Chris. So, you know, I don't think I'm crazy to think your Giants could be a playoff team next year. What do you think?
I'm with you on the Eagles. I think the Eagles are done. I think the Eagles need to start the rebuild. I think they're in big trouble. I look at it right now, and some people may call me crazy because they just won the division. I think it's a two-team race next year, and that's before I see what happens in the offseason. If Washington goes out there and gets Matt Stafford or Matt Ryan, I completely change my opinion. But if they go into the year with Alex Smith or, you know, whatever at quarterback.
Heineke.
Yeah. I think it'll be Giants-Cowboys. I think Giants-Cowboys are the favorites right now, if you ask me, going into next year. And a big reason for it is the schedule that Washington has to play because they finished.
Oh, yeah, I saw that schedule. It's brutal. They got to play Kansas City. They got to play my Packers.
So do we, but they're playing you guys now. They're playing you guys, and they're playing the Seattle Seahawks because they finished in first. And the Giants get the Rams instead of the Seahawks, and they get the Bears instead of the Packers. So I think the Giants will benefit from a second-place schedule. And all the factors that you said, man, I mean, I do think that it's only on the way up for the Giants. A second-year head coach on his way up, learning how to get better, everybody getting more acclimated to both schemes. Like you saw how good the defense was this year. Imagine how much better it'll be next year when these guys are more acclimated to it. You're bringing more talent on both sides of the ball. You get a wide receiver. Barkley comes back, the best player on the entire football team. He's here this year. The Giants win 8 games. Giants win 8 games. They go to the playoffs if Barkley never goes down. I stand by that. So I think the Giants and you know, Dak comes back and he's healthy. I gotta respect them. But I think Giants and the Cowboys are gonna be in the tops, and I'm going into next year with playoff expectations. I'm not saying we're gonna win 12 games, but I'm at a minimum.
See about 9 or 10. 9 is about the sweet spot for me. You don't need to win a whole bunch of games to win this division. It's been proven. You know, you can win about 8, 9, 10 games, and you're pretty much in the playoffs. But go ahead. Yeah.
Next year's a 17-game schedule. So at worst, I think we'll go 7-11. That's like if 7-10 rather. That's if everything goes wrong and things don't click. I do think we're going to be a better team. I think our ceiling is maybe 11. I'll even go as far to say 12 is an absolute ceiling. 12-5, 11-6. I've got us around 9 or 10. I'm in the end, I'm going to have us 9 or 8 or 10-7. If they have the type of offseason that I think they'll have, and I think they're going to have a strong offseason.
Yeah, we shall see. Obviously, it depends on Daniel Jones. I'm not the person to say that I'm on the Daniel Jones bandwagon, but I'm willing to pivot my opinion on Daniel Jones if he proves me wrong because, you know, he's got some talent. He's got some mobility. We'll see if he puts it all together because he's going to need to if the Giants want to make a playoff run. So, Chris, you know, let's move on to some NFC East news. You know, recently the Philadelphia Eagles, they fired Doug Peterson. Man, I thought, honestly, the Philadelphia Eagles were shoo-ins to win the division this past year. I felt that they were going to win about 10 games. I wasn't the biggest Carson Wentz fan, but I thought that Carson Wentz was a solid quarterback. I felt that, you know, Doug Peterson was a good coach, and Wentz was bad this year. The play calling for Doug Peterson was bad. The offensive line was in shambles. I mean, Philadelphia, they were such a mess, and right now, they by far have the worst future in this division. When you look at their offensive line, it's old and aging. They don't have many dynamic weapons on offense. They passed on Justin Jefferson for Jalen Reagor. The defense is okay, but the defense is filled with a lot of old, aging players. You know, not a lot of good young talent on that team. They're in salary cap hell, don't have a lot of money to spend in free agency. And Howie Roseman hasn't drafted a Pro Bowler in the last 5 years. I think right now, today, every single team in the NFC West is better. That's the Cardinals division. So you got Seattle, you got the Rams, you got the 49ers, you got the Cardinals. I take all 4 of those teams over Philadelphia. I think Green Bay today is better. I think New Orleans is better today. I think the Buccaneers are better. I even go as far as saying the Carolina Panthers are on the rise. They're a better team today.
I think Minnesota's better.
Minnesota definitely could be a bounce back team. So right now, Philadelphia, not close to being a Super Bowl contender. So let me get your thoughts on the Eagles firing Doug Peterson and kind of the state of the franchise overall right now.
Yeah, I was never a big, especially since I've been on YouTube, I pay a lot more attention to Eagles games, right? I watch the games, I call the games. I was never a fan of Peterson since, the last couple of years. I think he's been a really bad play caller. The problem that the Eagles may run into is the same problem that the Giants ran into, is who the hell in their right mind is going to want to take that job. Like you said, all the factors, an aging team, it's not an ideal spot.
Those fans are going to want to win games. They're not realistic. Yeah. They are not really fan base.
Exactly.
And and before you go, I really think that a lot of, the firing of Doug Peterson was because of the fans being critical and because expectations were way too high. Obviously, Doug Peterson wasn't great this year, but, the guy just won a Super Bowl 4 years ago.
Yeah, no, you're right. He did go to the playoffs the 2 years before that, and I'm with you on that. I was surprised they fired him. And I think at this point they should fire Roseman as well, because I think Roseman is more responsible for the Eagles falling off than the head coach was. I think Roseman's done a horrible job with the backloading of contracts. Like you said,
you drafted Jalen Hurts in the second round when you had Carson Wentz. You just committed $35 million a year to Carson Wentz.
And I think that has a lot to do with why Carson Wentz fell off. I think that screwed with his head. The year before, Wentz was really good. I think he threw like 33 touchdowns and 7 picks. He had a really good year with a very limited offensive roster. He didn't have a wide receiver that caught over 500 yards.
So I think it was a mistake drafting Hurts in the first place. I think Roseman's done a really bad job in terms of the way he's drafted, in terms of the way he's handled the cap. And I think the Eagles are in big trouble. And I honestly, somebody's going to take the job, obviously, but I don't think they're going to get the pick of the litter. We'll see how it plays out. But as a Giants fan, I'm thrilled. I think the Eagles are in big trouble. I think that it's going to take them at least 2 years before they start to rebound, because they got to get rid of all those older players. They got to get rid of all the. It's good. They're kind of where the Giants were in 2017. And I think it's going to take at least 2 years before they start the rebound. I think they're going to be at the bottom of this division for the minimum 2021 and 2022. I think they're in big trouble.
Let's talk about the quarterback situation in Philadelphia. If you are a Philadelphia Eagles fan, obviously you're not, but put yourself in a Philadelphia Eagles fan's shoes, What do you do at quarterback? Carson Wentz obviously showed some promise a couple of years ago. He's had some injuries over the past couple of years, did not play well at all this year. A lot of Eagles fans want to make excuses saying, the offensive line, the wide receivers. And listen, I'm not saying the Philadelphia Eagles had a Super Bowl caliber roster, but you look at Joe Burrow, you look at Justin Herbert, you look at Deshaun Watson, they were not on great teams, and they still found a way to play really well despite, not having a whole lot of stuff around them. And I understand it's hard playing with a ton of crap around you, but the way Wentz played was inexcusable. You gave him that big-time contract. You'd expect him to make up for some of the lack of weapons, lack of offensive line. So he's disappointing. So far, I think that Jalen Hurts actually showed some promise. He's pretty accurate. Doesn't have the greatest arm, but he can move around a little bit. I think that if given time and a good roster, he can win you some football games. And personally, I'm not a big Wentz fan anymore, but I would bring both of them back. I would not trade Wentz quite yet, because you're not going to get a whole lot back from him because of that contract. And I think it's one of those things where even if you move on from Carson Wentz, Jalen Hurts is not the answer to all of your problems. So why not just let both of them battle it out and see who wins the job? And if Jalen Hurts wins the job, then you might have to move on from Carson Wentz. If Carson Wentz proves himself again and looks like the guy that he looked like a couple of years ago, then hey, you got a good backup quarterback. And we saw Philadelphia, a couple of years ago, in the playoffs. They needed a good backup quarterback because Carson Wentz got hurt. So it's always good to have a good backup quarterback. So what would you do if you're the Philadelphia Eagles with the quarterback situation?
First thing I do is I pray. I'd go to church every Sunday and I'd pray. But all kidding aside, I think the situation is definitely not ideal. I think that's another reason why I think a lot of coaches are probably not going to be rushing to take this job. You don't even know who the quarterback is right now. But Hurts showed bits and pieces. I was not impressed with him that last game of the season. He didn't play well, but yes, he definitely looked good in a couple of games there down the stretch, and maybe he could develop into a good quarterback in the NFL. Who knows? I'm not a big fan of his, but maybe he could. I think Wentz does have upside, obviously. When he was at his best, he was the MVP in the league those first 13 games before he went down the year they won the Super Bowl. But I think his head's screwed up at this point, and I don't see Wentz coming back. I don't think Wentz wants to be with the Eagles. I think he's hurt by the way that they handled it. I think Wentz is going to force his way off the team. I think he's going to want to get traded. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe now that Peterson's gone, maybe Wentz is okay with staying there, and they do roll him back. I still think Wentz has a much higher ceiling than Jalen Hurts, but that doesn't mean that that's what the coach is going to feel and what the organization is going to feel. With Peterson gone, it opens up the possibility for Wentz to be back, and maybe that's why they made the move. If Peterson was still there, I think Wentz absolutely forces his way out of there. In the end, I hope they both stay, because then it's just going to be a battle. They're going to be screwing with each other's heads. I don't want them to have, a stability. I want them to be not knowing what's going on, and maybe that is what they end up doing. I don't think you get a whole lot for Wentz right now, kind of like what you said, because of his contract. I mean, and he's coming off a really bad year. I mean, he might have been the worst quarterback in football this year. That's how bad he was. And I don't see teams rushing to the table. Like, people bring up the Colts. Frank Reich, obviously, was his OC with the Eagles, and people think he may want him. But if I'm Frank Reich and I'm a really smart mind, why do I need Carson Wentz? Why am I going to pay Carson Wentz $30?
Just made the plans with Phillip Rivers, who's old.
Yeah, why don't I just draft a quarterback? Why don't I develop Jacob Eason and pay him pennies on the dollar, or draft a quarterback in this year's draft? Doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. I don't think there's a market for Wentz. So in the end, unless you're giving him away for next to nothing, I think Wentz will be back, especially with Peterson gone. And I think it's going to be a mess there. I think it's going to be an absolute mess. If I had to guess, Wentz will be the starter to open the year, but he'll be on a very short leash.
Yeah, and the one thing you could say that if Jalen Hurts is the guy, at least you got him on a rookie deal. You know, he's not making a ton of money. You could spend some money for agency on him. So I think that ideally, honestly, you might want to say, hey, Wentz, you contributed for a while, but you may need to go bye-bye. So we'll see, man. But
if you could get something for him, I think you trade him. If you get something good, decent for him, you trade him.
Oh, yeah, no doubt, no doubt. But, yeah, we'll see, man. It's definitely a tough situation in Philadelphia. I want to kind of transition to Washington. I kind of want to dive into their team a little bit, but I want to get to Dwayne Haskins, a guy that we both kind of actually thought could be a good quarterback one day. And personally, I think that Haskins, if given a second chance, could reboot his career. You know, I think that he's gotten very humbled by the NFL so far. And I think that, you know, maybe a second chance with him being driven, you know, realizing, hey, you know, I need to grow up. I need to mature a little bit. Maybe he could turn around his career. I don't think that he's the breadth of talent. He's got some arm talent. You know, he's got some arm strength. So we'll see. But, you know, I will say I think that he definitely blew his opportunity, because while his situation was not ideal, all you can really ask for in the NFL is an opportunity. You know, you were given an opportunity multiple times to show the coaching staff, hey, I'm the guy. And he failed. You know, he failed on the field. He failed off the field. He made poor decisions off the field. You know, wasn't great on the field. And listen, if Chase Young was out there in the strip club and things like that, he'd still be on the team. But Haskins, he didn't play too well. You know, obviously not the ideal situation. Learning 3 new playbooks. You haven't even started a full 16-game season. But in the end, really, Washington, all they asked him to do was just steer the ship and be an accurate quarterback, and he wasn't. So he failed. But ultimately, you know, I think that if he gets a second chance, he maybe could reboot his career. I don't think Washington was really all in on him from the jump. They kind of just said, hey, we made this pick, and if it works, great. If not, it's whatever. Because I see the Cardinals going out their way to help Kyler Murray. I see the Buffalo Bills going out their way to help out Josh Allen. Haskins, they did not help the guy out that much. And he was a one-year starter, probably wasn't ready to take over a franchise, and he's got mature. So what are your thoughts on Haskins being released and things like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the whole situation was a complete mess from the beginning. You had an owner and a coach, and Gruden didn't want him. It sounded like the owner forced the pick, which you never want. You want your head coach to be on board with a quarterback pick. I think Gruden wanted Jones, actually. It turned out after the fact. But I thought Haskins had upside coming in. And I remember watching game film on him. I remember watching him, break down game film. He seemed like a really intelligent prospect. But, I mean, the book on Haskins since he's entered the NFL, not a hard worker, and makes dumb mistakes off the field, right? Obviously, with what happened during the pandemic. I don't feel bad for him. I don't. I think he did it to himself. But Washington also failed him at the same time. I mean, like you said, 3 different schemes in the matter of, 12
13
games?
starts. 13
starts. Should have never been rushed in as early as he was. That was a catastrophic mistake as well. I recognize the guy got hurt, the quarterback that was starting, but Haskins should have never been thrown into the fire. And when he was, maybe in that game, you bench him the next week. He looked horrible in his debut start against the Giants. Wasn't ready to be playing NFL football. The offensive line there is not good. They have no weapons outside of McLaurin, so they didn't really help.
Even Alex Smith, you look at him, he's kind of out on the island too. Not trying to defend Haskins, but, I mean, come on here, people.
Yeah. No, they definitely didn't support him. But I don't think he's going to get a chance anytime soon, at least as a starter. I think he's going to have to earn his way back. He'll get a backup shot. Somebody will give him a shot as a backup. Maybe he sits and learns for 2 or 3 years. Maybe he gets humbled, like you said, and maybe he does get an opportunity, proves people wrong. But to me, he's definitely trending towards being a first-round bust. I thought I was definitely on the side that Washington mishandled that early in the year, only started benching him after 3 starts. I think it was when he had over 300 yards against the Ravens, 4 starts. So I was surprised there when they did that, especially in a year when you're rebuilding. I understand that they thought they could compete for the division, and in the end they could. But yeah, I thought it was the wrong decision then. But I'll be the first to say I was probably wrong. After what happened with Haskins with the strip club and everything else, there was obviously things from within inside the organization that they saw that they weren't on board with. Plus, you brought in Ron Rivera, who's got no ties to him. So in the end, I think that Haskins did a lot of it to himself. He wasn't given an ideal situation, much like Jones, but definitely didn't help himself. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, and before we kind of move on to the actual team itself, because Washington fans they're done with him. They don't like Haskins anymore. They don't like me talking about him anymore. But I'm gonna do what I gotta do, But I'm gonna throw out 2 teams that potentially maybe he could turn around his career with. I got 2 teams. Carolina, Indianapolis. I think that Carolina actually makes the most sense, and I'll tell you why. And actually, he recently visited Carolina, so I think that I might be on a little something. So. Here's the thing with Carolina. They're in a tough situation because Teddy Bridgewater, he's good but not great. Obviously, doesn't have the greatest upside. I don't think that he's their quarterback of the future. So they need a guy for the future. So it makes sense. You bring in a former first-round pick that has some arm talent, and they're not necessarily in win-now mode, okay? So they can bring him in. They can sit him for a year behind Teddy. He doesn't have to be rushed into action. And Matt Rule is going to be given another 2 to 3 years to get this thing right. So he can develop properly.
He signed a 7-year deal.
Yeah. He's getting the John Gruden treatment. So he can sit the bench, learn for about a year, really get the playbook down. They got some solid weapons in DJ Moore, Curtis Samuel, Robbie Anderson. And I actually like the Carolina Panthers' direction as an organization. I was a huge Matt Rule fan. I think Haskins could relate to him. I can see him turning around his career in Carolina if he gets his head on straight. And also Indianapolis, Frank Wright, really good offensive-minded head coach. Knows how to work with quarterbacks. They got a really good offensive line. He's more of your pocket passer, so he'll be good behind a solid offensive line. And they got some good weapons, And Philip Rivers, he could be out the door very soon. They do have Jacob Eason, but I think that, if Eason's not the guy yet, they're not super high on him now, he might just be a 4th-round guy. They said, okay, let's take a shot on him. But, I think that Haskins, Indianapolis, and the Panthers make the most sense for him realistically. I like the Saints too, but I think the Saints are still in win-now mode to where I don't know if Sean Payton wants to develop a young quarterback. So, do you think those situations could help him?
The Carolina one's interesting. Carolina's picking, 7th?
Yes.
So, it depends. If they like a quarterback in this year's draft, they just draft one rather than bringing a guy like Haskins. But if they're not enamored with a quarterback, that could make sense to bring him in as a backup, as a younger quarterback. You obviously got other guys, too, like Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold, I think, will be attractive to teams as well as a rebound project. I'd be more attracted to him than Haskins. But the Carolina fit does make some sense to me if they're not going to draft a quarterback in this year's draft. You bring him as a backup, the backup Teddy Bridgewater, and maybe he turns into something. So maybe that one could make sense. The Colts are a perfect spot for any quarterback. They got a great offensive line. They've got a great offensive mind there in Frank Reich. And if Reich likes him, maybe he does it. I've been saying that I think Darnold to the Colts makes a lot of sense. And there's a couple of other quarterbacks that they could be looking at. A guy like Stafford. If the Colts are in win-now mode, I think a guy like Stafford makes a ton of sense over there. Or Matt Ryan, maybe you trade for somebody like that. I think Matt Ryan to the Niners makes a lot of sense. Obviously, Shanahan was his offensive coordinator with the Falcons. They need a quarterback. They're kind of a team.
Ryan won the MVP and went to a Super Bowl with Kyle Shanahan.
Yeah, so I think that could make a lot of sense if the rumors are true about the Falcons wanting to trade him and draft a quarterback. So there's a couple of spots. The Carolina one's not bad. If they're not drafting a quarterback, the Carolina one's not bad for him to sit and learn for a year or two under Teddy Bridgewater.
Yeah, no doubt. So obviously, let's look at the future of the NFC East. I personally think that right now the 2 teams that have the brightest future is Washington and New York, and I'm going to actually pick the Washington football team to have the brightest future in the division over the next 4 to 5 seasons. I really like what they're cooking, but obviously I know you're probably going to say, nah, my Giants probably got the best future. I think that you probably going to make that argument. So, Chris, make your case for why you think the Giants might have the brightest future, if you think that's the case, or do you think the Cowboys might have the brightest future?
No, I definitely think it's either the Giants or Washington in terms of the next 5 years. It's hard to say which one's better because I don't know the quarterback situation for either team yet. Is Jones going to be the guy? And I don't know Washington. So until either team figures out the quarterback situation, I can't conclusively answer who's got the better setup going long term. But I would say right now, though, yes, if I had to pick two teams that had the brightest future, it's those two teams for the fact of the matter that they got younger rosters, they've got more cap flexibility. You could definitely argue the Giants with the coach. Joe Judge is younger. He's energetic. He's got a much higher upside, in my opinion, than a guy like Rivera, who I love. I think Rivera's a really good head coach. But Joe Judge, he could be a complete miss still, but he could be the next great thing. We don't know yet what we have with Joe Judge. You can make arguments for either side. Washington definitely has a more established defensive line. The Giants, I think, have a closer to finished product on the offensive line. I think Washington still definitely needs to completely refurbish that offensive line. They need a quarterback. So I think both of them still have major question marks. But yeah, I think just because of age, cap flexibility, emerging talent that's getting better, second year for both head coaches, I think both of them are definitely trending towards where you want to be. And I think the Cowboys and Eagles are trending towards where you don't want to be. So I agree with you on that. I think they both have the brightest future. I'll give you my answer after next year when I see Daniel Jones' third year with the New York Giants and when I see what the Washington football team does at the quarterback spot. But they're definitely the top two.
Yeah, and I actually chose Washington because I'm a big believer in Ron Rivera. I felt that Ron Rivera was a slam dunk hire for them. I feel they have the best unit in the division. When you look at their defensive line, the Cowboys have a really good wide receiver core, but I give the slight edge to Washington as far as what they have on their defensive line. A guy like Matt Ioannidis was out for the year. He's coming back next year. That defensive line was already scary. Now you add a guy like Ioannidis, who's really, really underrated to that unit, with Chase Young, who's a generational talent, Montez Sweat. They got the Bama boys, Deron Payne, Jonathan Allen. They got some guys on that defensive front. You look at a guy like Terry McLaurin. I think that he has special wide receiver written on him. I think that he's actually a younger version of Antonio Brown, but without the baggage. I could see him being a guy like Antonio Brown. I think that they're very similar to how they play. You look at Antonio Gibson. He's a pretty good running back for the future. I like him. He's a little bit raw, but we'll see how he develops over time. And look, I trust Ron Rivera to get the quarterback right and to stick with that quarterback. Because one thing we know about Haskins was he gave him a shot, but that wasn't his guy. You know, I think that Ron Rivera will have a lot more loyalty to a guy he drafts. Okay, he'll give that guy opportunities to succeed. He'll build around him, and I could see some options for Watson in this upcoming draft, you know, even though they do have a later round pick, and they do have a lot of money to spend in free agency, you know. So one thing I want to say is I think that Washington right now, it's pretty clear, they got a defense to win right now, okay? That defense is really, really good. The offense, they need another wide receiver. They could use an upgraded offensive line, but they need a quarterback. If they can get competent, consistent, even top 15 quarterback play, they can win 10 to 11 games. Obviously, the schedule's hard next year.
I agree with that.
But here's a move. Here's a move I think they should make. Here's a move I think they should make. Matthew Stafford. I love that move for them. What would you think about that move?
You took the words out of my mouth, and I hope they don't do it. But I've been saying that now for a few weeks. I think Matt Stafford to Washington makes too much sense. Deshaun Watson too. I mean, if they could bring in an established quarterback, I don't think Watson's leaving Houston, but if they could bring in an established quarterback like Matt Stafford, and normally I'm not for that. I'd much rather draft a quarterback. But the situation Washington is in right now, like you said, they're picking 19. You're not going to have an elite quarterback prospect at number 19. The top four are going to be off the board, and you have cap space. I think they're fifth in the league in cap space. I think it makes a lot of sense for Washington to try to go out there and bring in an established quarterback like Stafford, because you bring him in, or Matt Ryan, whatever, you bring in a proven quarterback that can step in here, you're gonna instantly be the favorite to win the NFC East. And because McLaurin's legit. They definitely have I think Giants have a really good defense, but I'm still going to put Washington's overall defense above them. Giants are closer than I think people think, but I am going to give Washington the edge there on the defense just because of their front seven. And if you get a Matt Stafford, he instantly becomes the best quarterback in this division going into the year. You got Terry McLaurin. Gibson had 11 touchdowns this year. He's an emerging running back talent. The offensive line scares me there. If I'm a Washington fan, I think they need to shore that up this year. But, yeah, you get Matt Stafford, you're instantly a 10-win team next year.
Yeah, and I think that Matthew Stafford is actually really underrated. He's been put in a horrible situation in Detroit over the past couple of years. Obviously, he's had some good weapons, but you look at the coaches that he's been dealt with, you know, the defenses, lack of a run game. I mean, it obviously doesn't help that you're in a division with Aaron Rodgers, but the Detroit Lions have been a mess, okay? They were Washington before Washington got good, you know what I'm saying? Like, it was Washington, Detroit, Jacksonville, these dysfunctional teams. I think that Matthew Stafford really deserves an opportunity to go to a team that's ready to win, that's ready to compete with a good head coach, and I think he can do some good things in Washington. So, yeah, that's definitely something that I would do if I'm the Detroit Lions, you know. What do you think about Stafford? You think he's underrated?
I like Stafford. I think Stafford is a fringe top 10 quarterback. I think people forget that the year before he was doing great. He only played 8 games. He got hurt. I think he had like 17 touchdowns or 18 touchdowns in 8 games with the Lions the year before. It's why I was higher on the Lions, I think, than most people coming into this year, and they obviously disappointed.
You thought they could make a run at the division, Chris.
I thought 8 or 9 wins. I thought the Lions had 8 or 9 wins in them going into the year. I was wrong. They completely fell apart. And they had the wrong coach there. There's no doubt about it. Did not work out there. There's a Bill Belichick disciple that did not work out. I was a huge Packers guy the year before. I had you guys going to the Super Bowl last year when nobody liked you guys. I think a lot of people had you guys missing the playoffs. This year, it was because of the way you guys drafted. I mean, I hated your draft. I didn't understand it. The Jordan Love pick, you got to help out your quarterback, and then you draft A.J. Dillon, who I liked, but he was a 4th-round prospect, and you guys didn't really need running back help for this year's team, and you had a win-now quarterback in Aaron Rodgers. So I still thought that you guys could easily win 10 or 11 games, but I wasn't super high on you guys going into the year. Next year, I'm going to tell you what, just looking at your division, before the draft, everything else, I'm still going to be high on the Packers because Aaron Rodgers, as Stephen A. Smith says, is a bad man. But the Vikings, I think the Vikings are on the come-up. I like the way they drafted this year. They got a young team. I think they're on the come-up. I like them to finish second in your division next year. I think the Bears take a step back. I think the Lions are in complete rebuild mode.
Yeah, Minnesota's definitely got some young talent. We'll see, but speaking of Aaron Rodgers, me and you are really high on Aaron Rodgers. And it's hard to say many quarterbacks are better than that guy. Not just in the league right now, but all time. I've always said that, after last year, I felt that Aaron Rodgers was arguably a top 5 quarterback of all time. And I stand by that. I really do think that he is a top 5 quarterback of all time. He's going to win his 3rd MVP this year. That'll put him as the 5th guy in history to win 3 MVPs. He's won a Super Bowl, and Aaron Rodgers' legacy to me is a guy that's exceeded expectations because he came in, that people thought that, he could never surpass Brett Favre, not even come close, and he's better than Brett Favre. And Brett Favre's great. He's a top 10 quarterback, but Brett Favre threw way too many picks. I think that Aaron has had less support than Favre had, and Rodgers has done more with less, in my opinion, and the bad teams this guy has carried throughout his career, bad defenses, wide receivers and running backs,
you had Ty Montgomery with wide receiver pants playing running back.
I know, it was bad, man. And we're talking about a guy in Aaron Rodgers that in a bad season throws for about 4,000 yards, about 25 to 26 touchdowns, and like 4 interceptions. That's a bad year for him because last year people said, Aaron Rodgers is washed. Well, he played pretty good. I didn't understand it. So what do you think Aaron Rodgers' legacy is? Do you think he's a top 5 quarterback of all time? I think right now I say in no particular order, Brady, Manning, Peyton Manning. Brady, Peyton, Elway, and Montana. Then Rodgers. That's my 5.
I got Rodgers 4 right now. And I got him above Elway. And I think Rodgers, when it's all said and done, if he finishes strong, still has a chance to go down as the greatest ever.
If he can win 2 more rings, I think he
enters the discussion. Rodgers, to me, is the most talented quarterback I've ever seen. I've been watching football now for about 25 years. He's the most talented quarterback I've ever seen. Not saying he's the greatest. You still got to give that to Brady. The knock on Rodgers is the fact that he's lost games he should win in the playoffs. He lost to my Giants. He lost to the Seahawks. Was it the Seahawks? He lost to the 49ers in a game he should have won. So that's the knock on him. But, you look at the numbers and what he's done in the playoffs. His defense doesn't help him. They've given up over 25 points in like every start the guy's had in the playoffs. He's got 40 touchdowns.
To put that in context, in 8 career losses in the playoffs, 36 points per game that defense is allowed. 36 points per game. Even if he plays great, then it's going to be hard for them to win.
Yeah. The guy in 18 starts in the playoffs where he's considered a choker has 40 touchdowns and 12 picks in however many starts I just said. I don't know. He's got 40 touchdowns, 12 picks in 18 starts. Peyton Manning, to put that in context, in 27 starts, so you're talking 50% more, 9 more starts, had the same amount of touchdowns, 40, and 27 picks. So, Aaron, I think the whole mantra that he's a choker, I don't think it's fair. Tom Brady, who I'm not comparing him to in the playoffs, he's got 6 Super Bowls in 43 starts, has 75 touchdowns, 35 picks. You double Rodgers' stats, he's got more touchdowns in less amount of starts. Aaron Rodgers has been money throughout his entire career. Last 3 years, the guy has thrown. What's the numbers now? It's he had 50 and 50, and I think it was 6 coming in over his last 2 years in terms of picks. This year, he threw 46 and 5. So you're talking almost 100 touchdowns and 11 picks, I think it is, over his last 3 years combined, 2 of which people said he was washed. The guy's a machine. He's the greatest pre-snap quarterback I've ever seen. He gets more free plays off than anybody I've ever seen play the position. He can make throws that Tom Brady could only have wet dreams of. He's an incredible, incredible talent at the quarterback position. I don't think he gets enough credit. I think some of it has to do with his attitude. I think people are not attracted to his attitude. He's not the most likable guy. Brett Favre maybe a little bit more likable. Obviously, a guy like Brady probably more likable. But I'm a huge Rodgers guy. He's the greatest quarterback in terms of talent I've ever seen play the position. And I hope he wins a Super Bowl this year.
Yeah, and I mean, Rodgers, he's got an outside shot. I don't think it's going to happen because he's got 89 career interceptions right now. He's at like 420 career touchdown passes right now. But there's an outside shot. He could reach 500 touchdown passes before throwing 100 interceptions. I mean, we talk about Brett Favre. Brett Favre threw a lot of touchdowns, but he threw a ton of picks. You know, Rodgers, you get the touchdowns without the picks. And he's really smart at the line of scrimmage, doesn't make a whole lot of mistakes. And one thing I will say is, I wish at times Rodgers maybe went a little extra mile in the playoffs, but more times than not, he's put that team in positions to win. And in the playoffs, if your quarterback puts you in a position to win, that's where coaching and defense and your run game needs to take over. And Green Bay, over the past couple of years, over the past 8 to 9 years, they've had horrible run defenses, not great defenses overall, not a great run game, and they've just been bullied by physical football teams that can run the football, keep Aaron off the field, you know, play tight man coverage with those wide receivers, and ultimately, he just hasn't had the support. You know, he's never had the defenses that Tom Brady's had, never has had, you know, all the great teams that Montana had, you know, and I just hope Aaron Rodgers gets another Super Bowl. I think he has a chance to get it this year, and if he doesn't get one this year, then that could be the last opportunity he has to get one in Green Bay because he's finally got a solid running game. He's got a pretty opportunistic defense. Star wide receiver in Devontae Adams. And I like Matt LaFleur. I think Matt LaFleur is a pretty good head coach.
Very good.
And now he's got home field advantage. So we'll see. I think that Aaron, if he doesn't finish his career with at least one more Super Bowl, I deem his career as a disappointment just because you see guys like Eli's got 2, Ben Roethlisberger's got 2, and I'm not saying they're better than Aaron because they're not. But you think that a guy like Rodgers would have 2 more rings. I think that if he gets another Super Bowl ring, his legacy will be remembered the way it should be because you look at a guy like Patrick Mahomes. People are already saying, oh, Patrick Mahomes, greatest thing since sliced bread. And Mahomes, he's great. He's probably the best in the sport right now. But I've seen damn.
I think Rodgers is.
So you right now today, you think that Rodgers is the best quarterback in football?
I take Rodgers over anybody right now, today. I look at Pat Mahomes' supporting cast. Andy Reid, to me, is the most brilliant offensive mind in football. Tyreek Hill's the most explosive receiver. And Travis Kelce's the greatest tight end in this sport. And Clyde Edwards-Helaire is very good. I think he's got a better supporting cast than Rodgers. Rodgers had a better year. I would take Rodgers over Pat Mahomes. That doesn't mean he's going to get it done when it matters most. Speaking about insane statistics for Aaron Rodgers, right now his touchdown to interception ratio is 4.5 to 1. The next closest in the history of football is 3.3 to 1. That's Russell Wilson. That's ridiculous. That's insane to me. So I hope he gets his credit when it's all said and done. But unfortunately, I think he's going to need another ring to get it. And we'll see. I hope he gets it this year. It would be fun to watch. You know, I'm a Giant fan, but I'm going to be pulling for him. I'm pulling for him. I'm pulling for Josh Allen. I'm a huge fan of Josh Allen. I said before the year started, Josh Allen was going to be this year's Lamar Jackson. Sometimes I'm wrong. The lines I was way off. Josh Allen, I was spot on. So I'm a big fan of Josh Allen. I want to see him continue to progress this playoff. And I want Aaron Rodgers to go out there and win a Super Bowl. And I'd love to see him beat Tom Brady. And I'd love to see him knock off Pat Mahomes in the biggest game in the sport. Because I think that would catapult his legacy.
Yeah, I think that if he gets 2 rings, he's in the category with Montana and Brady. I think that, sorry, Peyton Manning, gotta go bye-bye.
Well, you look at what he did. I mean, you look at his, if we want to just talk statistics and what he was able to accomplish, you can make an argument that Aaron Rodgers in 2011 and 2020 had the 2 greatest single-season statistical years in the history of the sport. You're talking about a 122 QB rating in 11.
2 highest QB ratings of all time.
In 2 different schemes. Let's not forget that. He was in McCarthy, now LaFleur. You're not talking about a guy that was in the same scheme throughout. He's got all new weapons, a completely new team. It's what I always said about Peyton Manning that was very impressive. The guy did it with Denver, and he did it with Indianapolis. 2 unbelievable statistical years. It's the same thing for Rodgers. I think that just goes to show you how talented this man is.
Speaking of Tom Brady won a Super Bowl 13-3. I mean, if Aaron Rodgers goes out there and scores 13 points in his playoff game, his team gets blown out. No doubt about it. They get blown out. And you look at what Aaron Rodgers has really done this year, you know, I've always kind of given Aaron the benefit of the doubt because Green Bay, they're a small market. It's kind of an odd fit. You know, Aaron's this big rock star. He's the star quarterback. And Green Bay is the small market that doesn't attract free agents. So he can't go to an owner and say, hey, I need a star left tackle. I need a Khalil Mack. I need a star wide receiver because, oh, they don't have an owner. They don't. The franchise is owned by the fans. So Aaron's always had to kind of make B to C guys look like A guys. And Aaron's definitely a guy that's top 5 all time to me. I still right now would say Mahomes is the best in the sport just because, you know, he's won the Super Bowl. He had a great run last year. I think that
I think most people would probably agree with you on that.
Yeah, I think that Rodgers, you know, at worst is the top 3 quarterback. Right now, I'd say top 5 quarterbacks in no order would probably be Mahomes, Rodgers, Wilson, Watson, and give me Lamar.
Josh Allen for me. I'm going Josh Allen.
I was going to say, give me Lamar or Josh Allen. Yeah, we'll see. But yeah, I mean, Aaron Rodgers, he's great. And yeah, I mean, we'll see if he can win a second Super Bowl. I do believe that he will do it, though, because I actually made a topic last year that said, I think Aaron Rodgers will win a second Super Bowl before his career is over. I don't know if it'll be with Green Bay, but if it's not with Green Bay, I could see him maybe going to a different franchise, like maybe the Patriots, and winning a second Super Bowl. We'll see. But, you know, we'll see, like I said. So we're going to kind of wrap up the show by talking about 2 more things. Let's talk about the Knicks and the Mets. Your New York Knicks, man. What's been going on? You guys haven't won a championship since 1973. You know, what do you think has been the biggest deciding factor for the franchise since that time as to why the team has just been bad? What do you think?
Yeah, when I first started, when I first started watching the Knicks, they were my favorite team in all sports. They were, you know, I was a kid. The 90s Knicks were great. They were tough. They were gritty. But really, since I've been about 15 years old, it's been the same story with them that it's been with the Giants as of late. And that's instability. And that's what the Knicks have always been. The Giants only the last 6 or 7 years. The Knicks since I was 15 years old, which is 20 years. Instability. Constantly flipping the GM. Constantly flipping the head coach. Trying to take shortcuts. Giving away draft picks. Trying to bring in established veterans that were over the hill. Stephon Marbury. Zach Randolph. Antonio McDyess. Go down the list. You know, what's his name? The guy from the Raptors that we traded for. I think 2 first-round picks I think we gave up for him. What's it? The white Italian guy. What's his name? I can't remember. But so many bad trades that the New York Knicks made that has set back the franchise because they always try to take shortcuts. And it's what I'm encouraged about. Not that they've played good the last couple of games, but it's what I'm encouraged about in terms of the direction of this team. The last 2 or 3 years, they have not done that. They've stayed the course. They've brought in young talent. They've accrued cap space. They've signed guys to short deals. Julius Randle was only a 3-year commitment with a 2-year opt-out. They have not, you know, the Tim Hardaway contract was horrible, but that was a couple of years ago. They've stayed the course. They've brought in young talent. Now, this young talent needs to mature. It needs to get better, and that's when you try to bring in premier free agents. But, I mean, yeah, to me, it's instability with the New York Knicks.
What are some of your thoughts on some of the young players they brought in? You know, Obi Toppin, obviously a high draft pick this year. He's only 22 years old. You look at a guy like Kevin Knox, hasn't really lived up to his full potential yet. A lot of people thought that he could be something big maybe one day. Some people were split on him, but hasn't really shown the promise you would think that he's shown 3 years in. But he's still only 21 years old. You know, you look at a guy like R.J. Barrett. He's 20 years old. You know, he's in his 2nd season. Hasn't had the greatest start to his career, but we'll give him some time. We'll see. But yeah, talk about some of the young players they brought in, you know, the Obies, the Knoxes, you know, the Barretts. What do you think about the young core?
Yeah, I think it's unproven. I mean, Obi Toppin, I think he needs to have an immediate impact when he gets back from injury because he's already 22. He's a guy that you brought in 4 years of college at Dayton. I think he's going to be an exciting player. I'm not saying he's going to be an all-star. I think he'd be a very good player for the Knicks. We'll see. You know, that's you know, we don't know yet. Kevin Knox, to me, I was never super high on him. I actually wanted what's his name? Bridges. I wanted Mikal Bridges. He ended up going to the Suns. Good 3-and-D player. I was always a fan of his. Knox, like you said, was a guy with upside. But, you know, when I first saw him play, I'm like, this guy doesn't know what he's doing. He's completely – and he really
doesn't really seem to have that aggression, that alpha, you know. He's young, but you just don't see the
uncoordinated too. He just seems uncoordinated. Like he doesn't know what he's going to do on the court. He doesn't think things out.
He doesn't have a great feel for the game. He's super talented. He's got the measurables, but lacks that feel for the game. And once you get to the NBA, if you're not developed, I think that he could have used another year in college. I think that he really could have.
I'm completely with you on that. And maybe he develops into something. I don't ever think he's going to be a star. I like Mitch Robinson. I think Mitch Robinson, if he could stay out of foul trouble, could really develop into being a pretty good center in the NBA. Barrett, I still like Barrett. I still really like Barrett. I don't know if he's ever going to be a superstar, but I think he'd be a good player. I don't think the Knicks have what we were all hoping Kristaps Porzingis was going to be, which it turns out probably won't be. He's continuing the injury history there with the Dallas Mavericks. But Porzingis, I think why we were all so upset about that trade, you saw a guy that could be a top 8 to 10 player in the league. I mean, you saw it. The guy was an MVP candidate before he got hurt. He's a super talented player. We don't have that yet. We need that. And whether that's going to come in the draft or free agency, I don't know. But I do like the young core. I like Neil Aquina as a role player. He's never going to be a starter. I think we have good young players that are emerging and getting better. I like Thibodeau, but we need 2 big impact players. And whether Barrett develops into that, or whether they sign a top tier guy via free agency, that's the way to go about doing things. But they're not there yet.
Take it or leave it. Knicks a playoff team in 2021 this year.
No. I think in the end, maybe they get the 9 or 10. I know they're doing that play-in now, where the 7 plays the 10. Maybe they get that, but no, I don't think they'll finish in the top 8 in the East. I think I hope I'm wrong. I think some Knicks fans may disagree with me. I think the Knicks' best course of action is to trade Julius Randle. I don't think Julius Randle's in the long-term plans of the team. Maybe I'm wrong. He's only 26, but they have the option to get out after this year. If you get 2 first-round picks like we did for Porzingis for Randle, you run. You do it. You continue to bring in a young influx of talent. That's the route that I would take. I want to continue to rebuild and continue to build the youth movement. But we'll see what happens. But no, I think they'll miss the playoffs. Got
it. Go Brooklyn Nets. That's all I'm going to say.
Nets are good. Nets are good.
Yeah, we're good. We'll see if Kevin Durant can bring us the title. I think that he can. I really do. But
I didn't know you were a Nets fan. You were a Nets fan? I didn't know that.
I'm a Kevin Durant fan. That's who I am. If he gets another title, I think he's a top 10 player all time. I really do.
I agree with definitely. Yes.
I think he's in the 15 range right now. He's in that fringe.
If he did it with the Nets, I'd agree with that. I think he would pass Larry Bird.
He passed Larry Bird.
Ooh.
He'd be at least close to Larry Bird because he's more talented than Bird. Bird was a great shooter, but I think Durant, he's a top 3 scorer of all time.
Larry Bird, though, I mean, you're talking about Larry Legend. I mean, that's tough. That's tough. We'll talk about that.
He'll be knocking on Larry's door at least. we'll say that.
Yeah. If he wins a title,
hey Larry,
he's got Larry's address. If he wins a title, he's got Larry's address.
Hey Larry, move over. I'm better. But yeah, we'll see, man. We'll see. So we're gonna end the show by talking about the New York Mets. Then we'll get out of here. So. Big news recently. You guys got Francisco Lindor, a really talented shortstop. He's one of the best young players in the game of baseball. He plays really good defense. He gives you really good at-bats. He can hit the ball over the seats, too, for a smaller guy. He can give you about 30 to 35 homers. He's done that. So what are your thoughts on Lindor and how he fits in the lineup?
Of all my 3 teams, it's not even close. I am most excited about the New York Mets. I think the New York Mets could compete for a World Series this year. They bring in Steve Cohen, who completely changed that organization. Steve Cohen's worth $14 billion. Baseball is a capitalistic sport. It's not a sport with a salary cap. He's worth more than the next 3 owners combined in all of baseball. The Mets now have a seat at the big boy table, and they're starting to show it. They signed Jeff McCann this offseason, a really good all-around catcher. Now you go out there, you get Francisco Lindor. On top of that, you bring in Carrasco in the same trade, who's a really good pitcher. He pitched to a 2.9 ERA last year. He's 34 years old, but he helps fill out the rest of this rotation, and I don't think the Mets are done yet. I'm hearing rumors that they're going after Chris Bryant. I'm hearing rumors that they're going after George Springer. I think the Mets and the Yankees are going to be fighting with each other all year. I can't wait to see how it all plays out. But as far as Lindor goes, great player. Guy's a 2-time Gold Glover, 4 straight consecutive years at the shortstop position with over 30 home runs. He instantly brings credibility to this lineup, the lineup that already had a lot of talent. Pete Alonso had 53 home runs the year before, most ever by a rookie. Michael Conforto's coming off a great year in the shortened season due to the virus. You got Jeff McNeil's a great all-around hitter. I love Dom Smith. I love what the Mets are building right now. I am super excited for baseball to start. I think the Mets are the favorite in the National League East.
Let's talk about Pete Alonso really quickly. You know, you talked about he hit 53 homers as a rookie. He kind of took a step back last year, but that's kind of expected, you know. And obviously it was a shortened season. So, you know, I think that with a full season, he could really put those balls over the seats. You know, what were your thoughts on Alonso coming in, you know?
I never thought Alonso would be that good. You know, I remember when he was in the minor league system, people worried about the defense. Tom Smith was known as the better all-around first base prospect. But I thought Alonso, you know, I thought he'd be a guy that get you 30 home runs. Didn't think he'd be a 50 home run guy. I think he's legit. The guy's legit. He's a power hitter. He's never going to be a guy that bats 300, but he's a power hitter. He's always going to hit you 35 to 40 home runs. And he's a force in the lineup. And then, of course, Jacob deGrom. I mean, my God. Jacob deGrom's the best pitcher in baseball. But I'm excited
I was going to ask you that. Is deGrom the best in baseball? Elaborate on that.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Jacob deGrom 3 years ago pitched to a 170 ERA, one of the greatest years in the history of baseball, not just for...
He had a losing record, but that doesn't matter to me.
Doesn't matter. That guy was dynamite. I think he was one game over. I could be wrong on that. I think he was 11-10. But
it was around 500, something like that.
Yeah, he was dynamite. The Mets just didn't give him any run support. But deGrom to me is the best pitcher in baseball. He's ultra consistent. You know, you look at it. You know, people bring up Cole on the Yankees. Guy had one deGrom-like year. Outside of that, he's never approached deGrom. deGrom, his entire career has been consistent. He's always one of the top 5 pitchers in the sport. He's right there with Kershaw, you know, when Kershaw was at his best. deGrom has become that dominant force, and I think he's still got a couple of great years left in him. So him at the top of that rotation. Hopefully we get Noah Syndergaard back this year. We bring back Marcus Stroman, who missed last year. People forget about that, the Long Island pitcher. And we'll see what we got at the back end of that rotation. Now you bring Carrasco, though. Carrasco's a really good pitcher. They're looking good, man. They're looking good. I could talk Mets for hours, but Pete Alonso's exciting, man. Pete Alonso's going to hit us at least 40 home runs this year.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how disappointed in the Robbie Cano signing are you? That tells it all.
I'm past it now. We got rid of Brody Von Wagenen, the GM that made the trade. Cano's out for the year because he got popped for steroids. We saved $24 million because of it, so I was happy that happened. But the trade in itself, I mean, my God, horrible. Edwin Diaz has not lived up near to what he was. Obviously, he was the prize in that deal, more so than Cano. Edwin Diaz has not really lived up to it. He was a little bit better last year. I still think he could be a good reliever this year, but Cano was just
he's past his prime. Can't play defense anymore.
Yeah, he goes on spurts. Like the first year, he was really good. The last month or two, he actually played well for the Mets at the plate last year. But yeah, it was a really bad trade. That trade is why we moved on. That's why we got a new GM. That trade was horrible, horrible.
God, unfortunately, Robbie Cano might not be getting many Hall of Fame votes because of the PEDs. Unfortunately, yeah, it is what it is, man.
If he doesn't do that, he goes down as one of the greatest second basemen who ever played, and
no doubt.
Now he will not be in the Hall of Fame.
So the Mets obviously lost the World Series back in 2015, but it kind of seems like you guys have struggled to get back to that point, you know. But now you're really excited, you know, for the season this year. You know, what do you think has been sort of the key to the Mets really getting back into that World Series mix? Obviously, they got to go out and produce on the field. I actually had you guys, you know, doing some good things last year. My predictions, I don't remember all of them off the top of my head.
I did too.
But why is this year different? And what have the Mets done since getting back to the World Series to give you a lot of hope to say, yeah, they're in the mix again?
The ownership. First and foremost, you start there. The Wilpons were horrible. Cohen's come in here. He's given this fan base a shot in the arm. Steve Cohen, people love him. Last year, I thought they had a really talented team. I think the virus, I think it took them a little time to get going, and people forget Syndergaard got hurt. Noah Syndergaard, number 2 starter, got hurt before the year started, Tommy John surgery, and on top of that, Marcus Stroman sat out the season because of the virus. So we're missing our second and third starter. So I think that had a lot to do with it. I think the bats took a little time to get going. But you look at this lineup, man, right now, and you figure Syndergaard will be back at some point in time. I still think we're going to add Springer. So let's say we had George Springer. George Springer, one of the top 20 players in the sport, really good defensive center fielder. You're going to have Michael Conforto, George Springer, Brandon Nimmo in the outfield. Brandon Nimmo's a really good on-base guy. You're going to have Pete Alonso, Dom Smith switching at first base. Smith will play some DH. Smith was great last year for the Mets. Definitely started to show that bat. Jeff McNeil, really good hitter. Will either be playing second or third base. You're going to have J.D. Davis. Now you had the shortstop. You got an improvement at the catcher. We improved. If we get Springer, we're going to improve defensively at the 3 most important position. The catcher spot with McCann. Obviously, the shortstop, a huge improvement. Rosario was horrible defensively. and Dennis Springer in the center field. I'm ecstatic. I can't wait for baseball season. I think the Mets are going to be dominant for the next 5, 6, 7 years. Love ownership. Love the direction of the New York Mets. I am much more optimistic about the Mets than the Giants or the Knicks.
Yep. Yankees fans might be sweating a little bit this year. You know what I'm saying?
Let's get it on, baby. Subway Series has been a long time since both teams were at the top of their game. I think you're going to see it this year.
No doubt. Well, Chris, man, going to let you go. You gave me a pretty good amount of your time. It was great having you on. And, yeah, great talking Mets, Knicks, and obviously your Giants, man. Obviously, I'm not a guy that roots for the Giants. I'm a Packers fan. But, you know, I won't mind seeing Big Blue becoming a good team once again, you know. We'll see how Daniel Jones performs this year. Not a big believer, but, hey, we'll see, man. But, yeah, thank you for your time, Chris, man. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me on, man. Anytime, man. Love what you do. Appreciate coming on. It was a great conversation. I'm a Packer fan in the playoffs. I'm pulling for Aaron Rodgers. So I hope you're happy at the end of the day. I hope the Packers get a Super Bowl. And, yeah, obviously, I hope the New York Giants get back to where they need to be, which is getting that 5th Super Bowl crown. But it's one year at a time. I like where we're headed. Definitely headed down the right path with Joe Judge. But I appreciate you for having me on.
Yeah, before we get out of here, I promoted you a little bit earlier, but, you know, tell people where they can find you, you know, YouTube, you're on social media, you're on Twitter, Instagram. You want to plug in anything else?
Yeah, obviously YouTube channel, like you said, Entertainah Talkin Sports. And on Twitter, I'm at Entertainah85. Don't know why I made that my handle. I wasn't really taking it seriously at the time, but I'm on Twitter a lot. I like to tweet. I've actually I really enjoy Twitter. So I never used it before the last 3 or 4 months now. I'm very active. I'm tweeting all the time. So you can definitely follow me there. I had a lot of fun. Yeah, just love talking sports. Love talking about my teams. Mainly the Giants, obviously. I would say 90% of my channel is Giants content, but I'm always open to talking anything New York sports or just general sports related. But yeah, come and follow me. Let's talk sports.
Yeah, no doubt. Chris, thank you for your time, man. You know, have a good day, man.
You too, man. Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Yep. Thank you so much for watching this video today. Please also note that the Juice Alert Sports Podcast is not just a YouTube channel. It is available on all podcasting platforms, including Spotify, Google Podcasts, iTunes, and Apple Podcasts. Also, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and share this content with all your friends. This podcast is my favorite thing in the entire world right now. It is my passion. And I want more people to listen to this podcast. I really want this podcast to grow. Also, a fun fact about me is that I want to go into the sports broadcasting and media world once I graduate from the University of Toledo, a college in Northern Ohio. I am looking to become one of the next great sports broadcasters and analysts out in the world. And I potentially would like to start my own network if this podcast really truly grows. Or if I fall short of that goal, I would love to work for a big-time network like ESPN or Fox Sports 1. I am open to all networks. So if you believe in my dreams and you see or hear my passion through the screen, be sure to tell all your friends about the Juice Alert Sports Podcast. Stay motivated, you guys. Have a God bless day, and I'm out.